Episode number 26 of the Fired Coaches podcast, and officially season number 2. It's only right to start it off with the Juice Man, Sundance, Sonny Wicks. Sonny, thanks for taking the time to join.
Season 2, baby. I love it. Like we're going to get on Netflix sooner rather than later. I tell you what, Fired Coaches podcast on Netflix. Let's get some sponsors, season 2, and we'll run it all the way through, man. We'll have people feeling like they want Ozarks, you know?
I'll have to get you on as my marketing guy here to make sure that happens.
I'm all for it. You know, I love the social media, so I'm all for it.
Awesome. Sonny spent time as a player, a GA, and associate head coach at Northern State. He's been on staffs at Colorado, Northern Illinois, San Francisco. He was a head coach for 2 years at Missouri Western before basically coming home a little over a year ago to join Wyoming as an assistant coach. So again, I know you're busy. We're just kind of getting out of this pandemic, it seems like. And so I know life's crazy, especially with your kids and things like that. So thanks for taking the time to sit down.
No, man. Are you kidding me? When Fired Coaches podcast DMs you, it could go one of two ways. All right. This is a secret society that's trying to get fired and you start to get freaked out, or they're a secret society that wants to know, how did you learn from it? How did you grow from it? And for me, like that's all I could ask for. I love sharing this story because, and I probably wouldn't have shared any of these stories when it happened or at the time, or even a couple of years after, because it just, it's one of those things that it takes time to process, and then you got to go through it. And that's one thing I don't think a lot of coaches do, is take time to process why or how it happened and what you need to do next. So for me, this is all about growth. And if I can help somebody else on this path, because I always lead with Coach Meyer, man. He said there's 2 types of coaches. He quotes Bum Phillips, them that's been fired and them that's going to get fired. And you do it long enough, if you're lucky enough, like Coach K, you can choose, when you want to go out, when you're that good and you've done it that long and you have that much character and credibility. So most of us don't get to choose when we want to leave and ride off into the sunset.
No, that's absolutely true. So talking to Coach Meyer, we've had a few guests on here who have talked about him, but obviously be remiss if I didn't talk about him and ask you some questions. I mean, what was kind of that difference from playing for him to being a GA? Were there similar things? Obviously, I know, kind of a lot of things are documented on how he was as a coach and a leader and the way he had things set, but how different was that for you making that transition?
You don't get a look behind the curtain. Oz doesn't let you back there when you're a player. He keeps thinking he's got the loud booming voice, he's got the curtain, and you get to Wizard of Oz and you're like, hey, what do I need to do to fix it? What I got? What do I got to do to pass? That's just, Coach Meyer was so good at kind of keeping that coach-player relationship, but also as a player, you knew he worked. You didn't know how hard, but you knew he worked, right? Like nobody could actually know how hard someone works. You're not there with him 24/7. I think the biggest difference, I always laugh because if you talk to any player you played for Coach Meyer, they maybe got 2 compliments in their 4 years of playing for him, or maybe they didn't even get a compliment on who they were, how they played, or how they affected the program until they were gone. So if you got 1 or 2, you could live off that for a couple of years. I mean, that was your rations, so to speak. But I think what happens is when you get to go work with Oz, when you get to go work with the Wizard, and you get behind the curtain, you realize that you learn how much coach cares in a different way that a player cares, right? And I think players care. They want to win. They want to be a great teammate, and they want to have a great team. And and sometimes players just only care about themselves. It's just a reality. But for coach, you really learn how a coach cares. And I think the goal of any program in creating a culture of consistency and caring and competing for the good of the program. And it's hard to create a culture of consistency and caring and competing where everybody believes and has the same level of care and wants to compete at the same level for the welfare of the team, not for individual successes or accolades. And so when you get there, you realize that coach was managing 17 to 20 personalities on trying to get them to care the way that he cared, the way that he thought about it, the way that you couldn't beat him into the office. You couldn't stay later than him. And that was the old school standard, right? It was how long can you grind? How long can you stay in there? Now we're mobile and we can be efficient and effective in any way. But there is still there's great lessons in the way the old school still does it. So for me, it was just learning how he cared as a coach, which then after playing for him and being with him, you sit there and look at the players that you're coaching as a GA, that some of the guys I played with, and you're going, you don't even realize like much about you and about us that you would be foolish not to even listen to every single word this guy says because of his standard, how he sets it. And I think most of us think the standard is created by coaches who sit in an office all day and write absurd and insanely irrational things on a whiteboard, right? And they're like, this is what we're going to do. And we're going to do it because I saw it and I wrote it down and I'm handing it to you on paper. When in reality, the only standard is the one that you live. And that was Coach Meyer. He lived it. And Coach Linder, I love working for Coach Linder because he reminds me so much of Coach Meyer in the sense of there are three types of people. There's like it players, there's love it players, and there's live it players. And there's like it coaches, and there's love it coaches, and there's live it coaches. And when you're around live it guys, like that is the most juice you've ever seen. Coach Meyer was a live it guy. Coach Linder's a live it guy. And so for me, it's just actually seeing what it meant to live it as a coach, because I had to live it as a player. I love the game, man. I wanted to live that every single day, but as a coach, completely different. And so getting behind that curtain to Oz, man, I needed that so I could better understand coach.
No, that's a great point. And I do think, like you mentioned, kind of the old school way of, being in the office super early, staying super late. As much of an old school thing that is, I do still think there is some value in that because, again, you're making yourself available, right? Yep. I mean, again, in the world we live in, especially with working from home and certain times and different stuff like that, obviously things have changed. But I always thought, your time in the office, I mean, if you're available and you got that open door, that's always going to help foster kind of relationships that way too. So
yeah, I love that quote, man, because here's Coach Linder. He'll laugh because he'll walk around the guys and he's, like I say, he's a lot like Coach Meyer, man. He's available. And Coach Meyer will go, hey, X, what's the best ability? And X will go, availability. Because the best ability is availability. And when you're a coach and when your job is people and your job is players and helping these guys, understand how life works, you got to be available. And Coach Meyer's available 24/7. Coach Linder's available 24/7. I mean, great coaches, you try to be available 24/7 for your guys because that's the best ability. Yeah.
For sure. I like that. Like it, live it, love it analogy. Shortly thereafter, you spent one season at Colorado. How different was that? Or how much of a difference? I mean, obviously I know Northern's tradition, the attendance, just everything that was and still is to this day, Northern State basketball. But how different was that for you going Division I, going Big 12, just from both those different worlds?
It's insanely different in the sense of just talent, right? And the level. I mean, you're the Northern Sun in the Big 12 at the time, right? It's light years away. But for me personally, like coming from a place that led the nation in attendance and then going to a place that's, you're like, man, this place can be rocking. Well, they'd sell out for Kansas. I mean, that's fine. But like, they're not selling out because they love Colorado. They're selling out because they love, there's a lot of people that want to watch Kansas. For coming from Northern, it was like, this is it. Like you're supporting the home squad. And so for me, it was an awakening of the understanding that level is not determined of legacy. It's just because you're at a high level doesn't mean the legacy is going to be awesome and everything's going to be great. And all the fans are going to show up. If you're good, anybody will come, right? It's the places where you want to know, like when you're not living up to the standard, that people are still there supporting you because that's what they do. So in that sense, it was kind of eye awakening, and man, I was pretty good at Northern as far as like the support and the fans and how people cared. And then you get to Colorado and you're like, this as a GA, you work some crazy hours as GA, you work crazy hours no matter what. If you're GA, that's what people don't realize. Like the GA hours don't change from the assistant coach hours and all that stuff. They're like, oh, once I get to a higher level, I'll be able to work less. That's not true at all. But you get in there and all of a sudden, Coach Patton, who I like to this day, I thank Coach Patton from the bottom of my heart of teaching me how to become like a functional adult. All right. I was still a GA at Northern State where I played. I'm back in my college town. Now, Coach Meyer is great, but he didn't teach me like Ricardo did about best wines. All right. Knowing that you got to make sure that you can at least swing a golf club because you're going to have to go to booster events. All right. You better know what a good suit looks like, feels like. All right. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be judged on your appearance. You got to dress for the job you want, not the job you have. And then you better be able to work a crowd in a room. And he taught me so many skills that I sat there as a third assistant was just watching, like, man, this dude can run it. Like he can run it. He runs the whole thing. And so for me, that was awesome because I walked in with a pair of khaki cargo shorts and a 2XL polo where I didn't look like, nowadays everything's skinny. I look like I had lost like 300 pounds off the Subway diet. That's the kind of clothes I was wearing. So he changed that real quick. Told me to go to Nordstrom, spend $2,000, open up a credit card, max out my credit card at that time. and buy some real nice clothes. Did that. Noted. Haven't changed since. So that's a big shout out to Ricardo. But when he tells you your first scouts, Texas, Kevin Durant, and then you got Mario Chalmers, you got James on Curry, you got AC Law, Mike Taylor. People don't even realize Curtis Gerald's at Baylor at the time was a freaking dude. He's still playing, making money overseas. Like, these are the guys when you're going into this league. And you got the Texas team, not even talking about DJ Augustine and Damian James, guys who played in the league for a long time. I'm sitting here at 24, 25 years old, trying to make scouting reports against these guys, and realizing that scouting reports they work really well when you're the more talented team. So
that's a good point.
That's the big difference right there, man. You can't replicate talent.
I like your comment about, getting the correct suit, because it just kind of jogged something in my mind that a great Twitter account would be finding coaches in their first few years of coaching and the suits that they have that are so big for them, and then finding them years later and how fit and slim they and tight they fit.
This is crazy. I was shopping at K Momo's 5-button down, man. Like, I was looking like I was on the Steve Harvey show. Like, I had crazy suits. And you can watch Coach Smiley in Northern Colorado, who's coach at Sheridan. Like, he's got the suit on that's like 4 people could fit in that thing. And it's just what you do, because you don't know anything. Like, the suit, okay, does it fit my shoulders? You don't worry about how it fits around the waist. Like, it was, I was brutal. So Coach Patton saved me, man. He helped elongate my career. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, I remember the same one when I was at Superior, and you got to wear suits and whatnot, and all of a sudden we just go to Kohl's and went with one of the assistants, and we're just like measuring it ourselves, like, yeah, it looks good, I think, and you just roll with it.
I think a bunch of bad guys that don't know what suits looks like saying, I think it looks good. I think.
Exactly. So shortly thereafter, you spend 4 years with Coach Patton again at Northern Illinois. What was that experience like? You guys were not able to turn the corner there. So what is that like, coming into a situation where success hadn't been there? You're trying to turn the corner, trying to build it, but you just can't gain that traction and momentum. And ultimately, you guys were let go after those 4 years. So, what was kind of that whole process like in those 4 years there?
Man, it's insane to think about it, because I've spent some time reflecting on this, and I do a lot. I write a lot of things down, but it's like a basketball game, right? So in a game, that the Coach Meyer used to always say, it's always a 1-possession game. Now you could lose by 10, but at the end of the day, like, there's a possession here, a possession there that you lost. It's always a 1-possession game. So the only thing that matters is the possession that you have. And much like in the contracts today for coaches, which are 4 or 5, if you get a 5-year or a 6-year deal, you hit the market in spades around here. But you're talking about 3-4 year deals, maybe 5-year deals, rolling contracts. You're not building programs anymore. You're not building teams that are going to show their way through, and you're creating an isolated event for a single year and trying to catch lightning in a bottle. If that's your chosen choice. If you want to try to bet on yourself and think that you're going to get the right guys in and hope everybody stays, like, that's the other choice. And for us, I say it's a 1-possession game. I can literally think back to the time when you sit there and you go, holy cow, man, we had a returning all-league 6'11" center and Sean Kowal coming back for this is year 4, going into year 4. Xavier Silas, all-league. You have Jake Darian Anderson, who ends up transferring and starting at Iowa State, grad transfer starting at Iowa State. You have Mike Denuno, who's a dude. You have these guys that you're sitting there going, man, we are equipped to make a run. And we were picked to finish top 1 or 2 in the MAC, I think. And then Jake transfers. Kowal decides to transfer. He wants to go back home before all this stuff. So all of a sudden you lose 2 year in a MAC where if you have 2 guys, you're really good. If you have 3, you can win it. And so we lose 2 guys in the offseason right before going into our year 4. And as much ground as you're trying to gain, it's a 1-possession game. You just turn the ball over twice. And now that margin spread. And for us, you're not able to recover from that margin. And you're always a couple injuries away. You're an injury away if you have a really good player and he gets hurt, an injury away from having a bad season, and you're a couple transfers away from having a bad season. And so in reality, you can't recover from that. You try to piece it together best you can. But when guys are leaving in May or in June, at that time, before the portal, before you knew what was happening, before all this stuff where you could just sit there and snap a finger, maybe find another guy, you're done. And that's you're trying to fight it all year long, but it's hard. It's hard.
how does, not to jump ahead here, but since you mentioned it, the portal, how has things changed that way? Now you're coaching, obviously, and again, it's talked about enough and it's published out in the media, but how has that game really kind of changed things in terms of, all of a sudden, guys can put their name in and you're still waiting to see if they're coming back and all that. I mean, just as a broad stroke, not just Wyoming basketball, but just in general, how has that changed?
Here's the deal. If there was a sign on the stock market for the portal or for Twitter, and you wanted to invest in Twitter, because Twitter was the original portal. When Twitter popped up, that became the portal. And so people want to talk about this portal as some like grandiose idea, but it's like we had all that information we already ever needed. Any coach, anybody who wanted it, you could Twitter. AAU coaches were tweeting out when their players were leaving or they were going to go, or all this stuff. Like the portal has been existing long before it ever even popped up. It's just it's a more formal way to now just look at it and say, oh, he's officially done, or this guy's going. I mean, and so it's changed the game in the sense that now people want to tweet about it more, so Twitter still gets the love, and people want to, reference the portal or, do cool gifts about the portal. I'm guilty of it all. I love it, man. Like it's wild out there. But for me, the portal hasn't changed the game as much as the rule that you get to transfer for free. So back then there was still a portal. You just had to sit out a year. You had to do a year in residence. Now, free 99. Everybody gets one get out of jail free card. So essentially you can screw up now. You can screw up more. You can take more chances. You can miss on more guys. It's just it's how it can get sloppy. And that's not how we operate or how we've ever operated, but it can get sloppy nowadays. And that's where we got to be really careful about how all the coaches treat this stuff, because Fire Coaches podcast will be a lot more popping after a bad portal experience than it will if you don't do your damn job. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, it is really just more of a way to make it official, because again, things were really kind of out there beforehand, like you said, with Twitter and all that. So, can you kind of talk about after you got let go at Northern Illinois and before you kind of got back into the college game back in 2015, 16, just kind of that experience and what you kind of went through in that time?
Man, this is why I say it's failure. Coach Meyer used to say failure is never fatal. Success is never permanent. In relative basketball terms, success is never permanent. Failure is never fatal. You're not going to stay at the top of the mountain forever. And just because you fail and it doesn't work out for you doesn't mean you're going to be down here forever. Still, until you failed in life and until you've been a part of something, like you said, invested in for 4 years, and like you've been a part of it with guys that were there with you the entire time, and you know what you're doing, you know how you're working, and not for it to work out, then you can really get to a point of vulnerability where you start saying, like, who is Sundance Wicks? That was my biggest question. Like, who am I? And there were things that I always look back at the Northern Illinois experience, and there were things that I could have done way better had I been more mature and understood what I was doing. I mean, I was a young coach, man. I was a young coach trying to grind up, and like at the end of the day, you got to continue to keep the mentors around you that are leading you in the right direction. You also have to figure a lot of things out on your own, which some of us it takes longer than others. And I lacked a lot of maturity when I was a younger coach. And so I humbly admit that now, but who is Sundance Wicks? When we got let go, I sat there and I went to Vegas with Xavier Silas to work in the NBA pre-draft camp, slept in cars, slept on couches. And what I got back to was like Sundance Wicks, coming from Don Meyer, I'm a developmental guy. Like I wholly believe that you can lack the necessary attributes to be quote unquote talented, but still end up maximizing more of your potential and reaching more of your ceiling and your growth points than players and people who just have talent. So I just knew that I was going to pour into people that were a lot like me, or maybe that a situation where people needed some juice and an extra kick to get it going, to realize like you can beat this dude. You just need to work a little bit more than him. You need to work harder than him. You need to work in invisible hours. Well, he doesn't want to do this, but you got it in you, because everybody has the requisite, intelligence essentially to just work hard. We're all gifted. It's an intangible skill. It takes zero talent to just go out there and work freaking hard. It takes some toughness, but it takes zero talent to do the little things. And so who is Sundance Wicks? He's the guy who he's always around. Like he's always available. He's always with guys, early mornings, late nights. And he's trying to help you grow every single day. And I need to get back to that. So working with X and pre-draft guys at Kauai, you got to see what it was at the highest level, how much they loved it and lived it. Then to go back to Arizona and basically say, wherever God sent me, whoever's for this, whoever's with this, let's go work. And we work with some amazing people. I mean, amazing. And guys that are like Marcus Howard last night, one of the guys we worked with, he was playing for the Nuggets. I mean, he's playing for the Nuggets in his hometown of Phoenix, Arizona, against Phoenix on TV. And this is the dude who just, he was built the right way. So very fortunate. I mean, you got to find yourself after those things, and you got to be okay with finding yourself, and you got to be okay with understanding that I had an identity crisis. Sundance, Wicks. Oh, who am I? What do I do? We confuse that. Oh, I coach basketball. So I'm a basketball coach. That's what I do and who I am. I'm a basketball coach. Oh man, you are a light warrior, bro. You are a warrior of the light. You are not a basketball coach. That's what you do. Who you are, you're a different cat, man. You're an enlightened, soulful being that's here to just rock and roll and get people to understand that about themselves. And so when you go into those life-changing moments and you get down in the valley of despair, so to speak, you start to find a little bit more light about who you are. Do you think brighter in the darkness? Light shines brighter in the darkness, man.
Absolutely. Do you think, as tough as the time that was, that really, at kind of an earlier point in your career, really gave you some chance to reflect in kind of the direction and the juice and everything that you're kind of talking about right now?
This is the best thing that ever happened to me. I say that unequivocally. This is the best thing that ever happened. Was getting fired. And if I hadn't gone through that time in AZ or hadn't got fired, I wouldn't have sat at a table with Josh Looney and Mike Halloran at a Holiday Inn in Sioux Falls, during the Elite Eight, and had a chance to go down and interview and get my first head coaching job. Like, had I not gone through that, they didn't tap dance around that. I love that about those guys, man. They went straight to it and said, tell me about being let go. How has that helped you? How has that changed you? And I could sat there and been who I was in 2012 and just, been negative and pessimistic about it and not think about the growth points that happened. Or I could sit down there in that Holiday Inn and at that conference room and just tell them exactly what it did to me and how it helped me, and how it changed me, and how I see things and my perspective on life just from being let go. Because until you're scarred, you don't really realize what it's like. And it's not so bad. Like when you're not undefeated, when you're not sitting up here and everything's been handed to you, or you've just been blessed with every good thing that's ever happened to anybody in the history of the world. Like I've always said this, I never ever envy the undefeated or unscarred. Like, show me somebody with some scars who's been through some stuff. All right. And I'll tell you right there, that's probably a high level human, because they're still here. And a lot of times that success defeats us, and it takes us to a point where we think we just deserve everything. And that's just the wrong way to go about life, in my opinion.
That's phenomenal. So in 2015-16, you get back in, you join the San Francisco staff with your brother, who actually is on staff at that time, under Coach Rex Walters. It only lasts 1 year. Coach Walters is let go. You guys, I think, finished fifth that year. You lost an OT game to Gonzaga. You guys were basically kind of in the mix, and looking at kind of the results and things, you guys had a lot of close games that year. What was that like, getting back in, being with your brother, and then kind of going through the same situation again, not in the same degree where you had been there, 4 years like you were at Northern, but again, same deal where head coach is getting let go, and it's a new experience again for you?
I mean, you don't plan on it being that way. I mean, like, I think a year prior, Rex Walters was coach of the year in the West Coast Conference, right? So, like, here's the deal. The guy was coach of the year a year ago. He's one of the only guys to ever get coach of the year outside of Randy Bennett and Mark Few, right? I mean, if you look at that tenure of Gonzaga and St. Mary's, so for him, for Rex to pop in there, become coach of the year, you're sitting there going, this dude knows what he's doing. He's got it figured out. My brother's up there, speaks superlatives of him. He had some staff turnover because guys got head jobs. So that's what you want as a head coach. You want your guys to move on. And for me, enough spots opened up where I could come in and essentially have a chance to work with my brother, which is a dream. It's funny. I have a picture when I was a GA and Luke was a player. And so I was a GA. I got to coach my brother at one point, and then coach with my brother and actually be the understudy, right? Like, my brother had been with Rex for a long time. So learning from him and their system and style of play, how they do it, coupled along being inside, like, what I would consider a mentor now in Rex Walters. You can't script that stuff, man. It was so cool. 2 kids from a couple of kids from Forest Road, man, on a dirt road, 10 miles outside of Gillette, Wyoming. Just a couple of brothers out here coaching the West Coast Conference on ESPN. It was pretty cool. I'll have pictures for that year for the rest of my life, and it'd be a year I'll never forget.
So shortly thereafter, you head back to Northern State. You're named associate head coach. You have 2 great years there. That second year, you guys are so close, falling by 2 to Ferris State. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, my thing cut out there for a second. You finish runners up to Ferris State, losing by 2 in the national title game, 2017-18. Talk about coming back to Northern, but also, again, being as close as you can get without finishing it off at the end of the year.
I tell coaches, never say never, right? Never, never say never. Like just in this profession, never because twofold. I mean, the great things could happen, weird things could happen, bad things could never say it could never happen to you. Bottom line. So coming back to Northern to answer your question, as I'm sitting there in San Francisco, like, all right, well, I still got stuff in Arizona. I go back to Arizona, do some things. But when you get a call from, your Paul Sather, who's the guy who drove to Force Road more times than any coach in the history of the United States of America, to recruit Sundance and Luke Wicks. When that guy calls you and he's the head coach and he got to recruit you, you love him to death because he's an awesome human being. Paul Sather's a phenomenal human being. Shout out Sather, best motion coach in the country too. So when you get that call, he's like, Sonny, what do you think about, coming back being assistant? I told myself after I was a GA, I'm never coming back to Northern. I don't need to go back to Aberdeen, South Dakota. There's nothing back there for me. I love that place. I go back on gypsy days and
why was it? Just because you had such a great experience?
Yeah, just because I felt I ran my race there, right? Like I felt like I played, I was a GA, I ran my race, like 7 years in Aberdeen is a long time for anybody who's a college kid. And so we got it done. And then you get a call back and you're like, I ran my race, but I was never an assistant and I was never an associate head coach, right? So I just going through the orders in Northern State, there's some things I still got to probably accomplish there. And so you go there and you're working for Coach Sather and you love it every single second of it because of all the things you learned from San Francisco, from Northern Illinois, finding out who you are. And honestly, the juice, what people don't realize when you talk about the juice is it really didn't kick in until I got back into college coaching at San Francisco. Like I had some juice down in AZ and stuff like that, but really the everyday being around a team every single day and how important it is to have that consistent energy. In 2015, that started, and that's when my life started to change and snowball in a positive direction. Just because I thought I was creating a little bit better cosmic vibration, if you want to go for lack of better phrases, from my spirit and my soul to the universe. So I kept bringing juice every day and got after it. And then we get a chance to, that's again, just kid in Aberdeen, South Dakota, just a couple guys in Aberdeen, South Dakota going to a national championship. I mean, hard to do. Losing is never fun, especially on a last second shot in the national championship. But that memory and that experience with your alma mater, it's like coaching with your brother at San Francisco. Like I've done some cool shit, man. Like it's wild to think about it. Most coaches don't reflect on their career and think about how cool or awesome each spot was, but they're so unique and so transformative every time you get to go to a different pocket. It's awesome.
I was going to ask you that at the end, but since you brought it up again, I mean, how often do you, because again, this is, and you kind of mentioned early on too, just a little bit, but I think this is something that coaches miss. And that is the reflection piece. And part of it is because, you don't want to think about the past. You just want to keep, on to the next one, on to the next player, the next game, how often do you sit back there and reflect on whether it was some of these situations that didn't end the way you wanted them to, or ones, where you had great success at Northern as a player or GA or associate? I mean, how often do you look back at those days?
Only with gratitude. I used to say you got to have the grit and the grind, but I believe now more in grit and gratitude. And because it's like, you're going to work hard every single day, but the gratitude, even when you work hard, it doesn't work out. You have to be thankful for that as well. I mean, I think we're just, I don't know if you're a real human being, if you're only thankful for the good times and never thankful for the bad times. I mean, I don't know. I can't identify with you. I don't know who you are. And so to couple it all together, you want to be bitter about some things, especially when you have an emotional response and you're a competitor. And then us as coaches, we also are predisposed to sit there and just cut something off because we're about the process, right? And the process is not thinking about losing in the past. We can reflect, we can think about it immediately so we can learn from the loss, but we can't go back to that. It's just, we just bury it deep in our soul. And then it all comes out 40 years later and you're divorced 14 times, that's just what it is. And so why do we do that? Because, maybe that's what everybody else has taught you to do in the profession. And for me, it's just like, you have to let these moments suck. You got to let them soak in. You got to absorb them. You got to experience them. You got to feel them with true and authentic emotions and feeling and passion, because it's what you do. It's not who you are. So enjoy. If we were to go to Disneyland for a year, we're not, it's not like we're all of a sudden, they're just Disneyland guys. No, we went to Disneyland for a year. It's what we did. All right. It's not who we are. I'm not an Imagineer just because I spent a year at Disney. It's people that want to wrap their identities up in whatever they're doing at the moment. And that's just not the case. And so we have to separate that, look at what we did, reflect on it so we can learn from it, but also keep that here because that was part of our sacred journey, which that's what it's about. And I don't know. there's such a stigma to being fired that it's beyond me that I love talking about it, because it's such a soulful part of my journey, and it's such an awakening part of my journey that has allowed me to have a clear view on any of this stuff. I don't go to work thinking about what if this doesn't work out, because it already didn't work out. So I don't have to think about that.
You've already lived it, right?
Up every single day. I've already lived it twice, man. Like it's not that big of a deal. And at the time we think it is, and it's not that big of a deal because it's just a job. People get let go from jobs all the time, but you want to wrap your life up into it. You want to wrap yourself up into it and say, this is who I am. Well, that's where it can be debilitating a little bit. And so for me, I mean, that's how you'll feel when you're around me, is it like you're not wrapped up in a job. You know, you're experiencing life. That's what this is about. These kids that we're coaching are experiencing life. They're playing basketball. They are experiencing life, and we forget that stuff. As coaches, we are still experiencing life, but we just think, I'm a coach. I can't experience life in the way I should experience life. I got to do it by this book. And there's no path. There's no set road for it to work out.
I agree. Everybody's just so different from one another. So talking about your journey, and you kind of touched on this just a little bit, talking about that Northern State experience, but sitting down and going through the interview process for Missouri Western, where you become head coach for the first time. Can you just kind of talk about getting that opportunity and what that was like? I mean, you were there 2 years. In that second year, I believe you guys won 18 games, which was the most games won in Missouri Western basketball in like the last decade. So obviously you had things going there. I mean, what was kind of that whole mantra of, hey, I'm finally getting a head job here?
Prove it, right? Like, you know, as we're working up as assistants, and we're climbing the ladder, climbing the social ladder, if you want to call it whatever you want to call it. You know, you're trying to become a better coach, man. We're not climbing a damn ladder here. There's no freaking steps. Just trying to become the best coach and person you can be every single day. And so you get the job, and it's like when you get offered, immediately when you're offered a job at Boudreaux's, you know, in St. Joseph, nice place, freaking phenomenal, fried chicken, love it. Still think about it to this day. You get the job offered in Boudreaux's from Josh Looney. It's basically like, prove it. Here you go. You've done this a long time as an assistant, you know, 12, 13, 14 plus years. So now it's your chance. So all those things that you said as an assistant, you remember that karma is coming back to you when you're a head coach. All those things that you thought in your head that you could do better, or you thought like this is the better idea, or this, and this, because you're not the head coach. What does he know? Like I watched this film. It's all coming back to you as karma as a head coach. And so to get that experience and to be able to prove it, you know, and still go through a losing season in year one. You show growth because that's what we're about, right? But at the end of the day, the ledger says lost season. You lost. That doesn't go down in the books as like, oh, he was a first year guy. They don't put an asterisk by that, you know. This is his first year. That'd be nice if everybody got a first year asterisk. Some would be better than others, but most aren't the way you want them to be. And so then you go 4-7, 4-8 at Christmas next year, and you're thinking to yourself, and maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was going to be at this job. And at that point at Christmas, when you still have people that believe in you, your boss sends you a text message that tells you like, hey man, I ain't going nowhere. That's freaking powerful. All right. I wish administrators could hear that. Like, cause at the end of the day, that text from Josh at Christmas where you're sitting there going, I don't know if I'm cut out. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'm that good. I'm that good at as good as I thought I was. And he says, keep plugging. I see it. You're right there. We'll get these pieces back. We'll get it rolling. Everything's going to be awesome. Believe in you. Something simple as that. Can sit there and make you breathe a little bit. Know you got a dude in your corner who's fighting for you because that's the same guy that hired for you, and you'd hate for the same guy that hired for you and not to fight for you. Right? I mean, but it happens every single day. Fired Coaches Podcast, man. That's what happens. Guys that hired you don't fight for you anymore. And this dude hired me, even though it was still early in the tenure, still fighting for me. And that is so much more powerful than being like sarcastic or witty or, hey, you know, hope you guys can win, you know, like that doesn't help any coach. So we do that, and all of a sudden we just start rattling off these consecutive home victories after consecutive home victories. The power of belief starts kicking in. All of a sudden you see the culture starting to ride its own wave because you've been doing the same things over and over again every single day as a person, as a coach, as a program. And you just keep building these habits, and then boom, all of a sudden you're 13-1 at home, and it's all said and done. The only loss is to Northwest Missouri State, beat first top 25 team in X amount of years. And you have a winning season, you become 18-14. And when you were sitting at 4-7, 4-8 at Christmas. And so to that experience, what I say is prove it. Anybody who's looking for their first head coaching job is nothing more than, I want to prove it. I want a chance to prove it. Prove that you can do it. Prove that you can go in there. And for me, selfishly, prove after being let go 2 times as an assistant, you can go in there as a head coach and get it done. And that's the only way you can get confidence in this profession, is doing it. Signing players, coaching teams, winning games. The only way you get confidence is doing it. Just like as a player, confidence only comes from demonstrated ability. So if you want to make a shot, go into a gym, shoot 100 shots, make 90 of them, feel pretty damn confident about yourself. All right. Make 30, maybe get in the gym a little bit more. Okay. So that process was all about the prove it.
How tough was it then to leave? I know you're transitioning, you're going to Wyoming, you're coming home. You took the job just over a year ago, just before we kind of got into kind of the pandemic and everything like that this past season. But how tough was that to leave Missouri Western and then, go back Division I and take a job back home at Wyoming?
It was extremely hard because you don't think you're leaving. Like this, the thing about jobs is people don't realize that, like, most people aren't sitting here with a plan, if this doesn't work out. I'm not sitting here in Wyoming thinking like, I know what I'm going to do in 2 years if this doesn't work out. No, this is what you do. This is what you do. Not who you are, it's what you do. So you're here working this job the best you can. And so people just sometimes think, oh, this guy went to Wyoming, I don't plan on getting a call from Jeff Linder at 11:45 on a Saturday night. It's just like your best friend texts you and be like, Jeff Linder's going to call you, answer the phone. And you're going, why would Jeff Linder call me? Like, this is the middle of April, at 11:45 on a Saturday night. I haven't talked to Jeff Linder on the phone ever before, unless it was Steve handing it to him so he could talk some trash to me. Like that's about it. So when the opportunity is presented, you don't have long. This is unlike any other profession. It's not like you 2 weeks, put your 2 weeks notice in and slowly integrate yourself into the next job. You got to decide right then and there that when you make that decision, you've stopped working for where you're at and you're working for where you're going. And so that's why it was hard, because you just knew like you had to immediately and abruptly stop something that you built with a bunch of special guys. It's like our players were bought in, and you sit there and as a coach, you go, shit, I believe in everything we're doing too. But then you start looking at, this is a business. And so for your family, you have to look at it in that sense too, because you'd be foolish not to. I've only looked at it as something I loved before and been fired twice. So when you start to actually look at it for what it is a business. People get paid money to do their job. All right. So they also get to make choices about their job. They get to decide if they want to stay. They get to decide if they want to go. That's just what it is to be an adult. When you earn the right, when you graduate from college, you go out and work in the working world, you get to earn the right to decide what you want to do with your life. Nobody gets to decide that for you. So that decision is tough, but it wasn't tough when I was thinking about my family and I was thinking about the situation of what it could be with my wife and kid, now 2 kids.
Well, and obviously you spoke extremely highly earlier about Coach Jeff Linder. And I actually just read a piece on The Athletic that I'd interviewed him, and I don't know him at all from other than you mentioned him on here, but I just appreciated just his transparency and honesty, which again, kind of going back to you, and it's not all coach speak of, this is what we do. And this is what it's very honest, which again, I think is very hard to find in today's world, but it's obviously a breath of fresh air when you can kind of read that kind of stuff. So can you kind of talk about going to work for him? You're talking about April, we're getting into pandemic stage, and just how that transition has been for you over the last year here.
Well, what I always said this a couple of things after, when you start working, you want to work for coaches that care about their family. I mean, I'm be flat out honest with you. I don't want to work for a coach who doesn't care about his family. Period. That's hard for me. So I immediately knew from Steve and Coach Deweese that like Coach Linder loves his family. I mean, he's going to let you. He goes as a head coach. He's going to let you go to your sons or daughters' games. He's going to encourage that. He's going to want you to spend time with your family. He's not going to micromanage that stuff. You got to do your damn job. Show up and do your job. Well, I'm old enough now to show up and do my job every day. I know how to do that. Maybe when you're younger, if you get that much freedom, or if a boss gives you some autonomy, you won't show up and do your job. That'll hurt you in the long run. But now, working for Jeff, like you said, who's real and authentic. I mean, real, recognized real now. He always says that. And when you're a real dude, it ain't hard, because real dudes don't like to be around fake dudes, period. All right. And real dudes it's hard to find other real guys. So when you get a staff or a collection of guys who keep it real all the time and are about just the real bare bones of what your program should be about. I love this in Jeff Linder's first meeting with the team. He looks at guys, he gives them a sheet of paper, basically has our culture code on it. And it's got a couple things, program words, program rules, zero tolerance stuff, a couple things. And he goes, I'm not going to hand you a notebook that tells you how to live your life. I mean, I love that. Like he looks at, what do we do? Coaches, here's our program notebook. Here's 4,000 pages of things that you have to read to understand who we are and what we do. Once again, a bunch of crazy idiots on a whiteboard making up shit, right? Here you go. And so what do? We think that we're really smart because we handed out a 3-ring binder that has 400 pages of notes that they'll never read. Just like draft day when the guy got the $100 bill off the back of the book, of the playbook, right? He read the whole damn thing. Most of us don't do that. So coach gives them a page, gives them a couple guidelines and rules. Don't embarrass yourself, your family, in the program. Be smart about certain things. And here it's all in one sheet, because we're not going to write it all on the wall. We're not going to write it in a 3-ring binder. We're not just going to sit there and flap our gums. We're going to be about the everyday work. And I was raised in the John Meyer program, which is about the everyday work. So working for a guy like Jeff Linder, who's about the everyday work, like, I'm cool. That's what people don't realize. When you get in a situation like that and you're working for a guy like that, you're good. I'm not sitting here thinking about what's going on over here, what's going on over there. I don't read hoop dirt. Everybody else read hoop dirt. I don't read hoop dirt. Like, I don't need to know the dirt. I ain't about that life. Now, is it fun and interesting? Certain times of year, man, crap. April, March, May, man, hoop dirt is a fun place to be on. When you're done playing basketball.
Absolutely. As long as your name's not mentioned the wrong way on there, right?
Yeah, no, it's a fun place to be on, man. So I don't want to be the offended hoop dirt. Say I don't read hoop dirt, because everybody reads hoop dirt, but I can't spend all year on there, man.
Absolutely. No, I love the real recognizes real. I guess to finish up here, is there anything that you do on a weekly basis to kind of get better, whether it's reading certain stuff or listening to certain things?
When you get go, like I really like the Headway app. There's a Headspace app, I think, for more meditation, but I like the Headway app because it takes all the books and does little clip notes on each chapter. And you can basically go through a book in minutes. Now, that would be probably more the cultural millennial way of going through a book right now, but sitting down and reading a book full time, like I got about 3 of those that I do, where I'm just kind of alternating between a hardback, a paperback. Like, you're still reading books, physical, love it. Still, and I have a huge collection of them. But for me in the morning, I get up, get coffee. If I'm going to go get a coffee at Starbucks, I'm going to take that 15 minutes in the car and just listen to Headway or listen to something. And personally, just for me, I've always been big about just reciting your own mantras and kind of meditate in the morning. So work out in the morning on the Peloton, sunny spin cycle on the Peloton. And then kind of just take some time to yourself and reflect on who you are. So how do you bring the juice every single day is a conscious choice. That's why I tell people that think, oh man, you got so much juice. How do you have it? Like, how do you tell me the secret juice, man? Well, you get some fruit, put it in the blender, do that, put the ninja on, and next thing you know, you're the juice, man. Like, it's pretty damn easy, shit. So for me, it's intentionally waking up every day with the same energy. So what I like is when people go, how do you have so much energy? When people go, why are you like this all the time? I love that personally, because I chose to be that way. And what I'm trying to impart on people is like, just however you want to be. And if you want to be that way every single day, do it. Marcus, choose to do it. Like, go for it. But don't ask people like how they're that way, and then you not want to be that way or change whatever's about you that you don't like to go be that way. Just be you. If you don't want to talk, if you're not an extrovert, that's fine. Just be you. But always be uniquely and authentically you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate all your transparency, honesty. You're obviously one of the best Twitter followers or personalities that are out in the Twitterverse. So again, I just appreciate you taking the time, going through your journey, and look forward to seeing the success you guys have at Wyoming.
Thanks, Marcus. And I'm just getting started on TikTok too, man. I'm about like 14 years behind all the rich, teenagers in LA, but I'm just getting started. I think I'm going to use that as my platform to showcase my kids, which is weird too, to even think about that. You want to you want to show people what you're doing with your kids. Like, it is weird. It's a weird.
I saw the one with, I don't know which one it was or whatever, but them rolling down the street and the bike and the music. And it was high level.
It was pretty hard, right? Like,
yeah.
I was pretty proud of that. I got like 2 likes. So I think I'll be depressed for 3 weeks now. Oh, it's funny. This has been great, man. I'm anytime you need me to help host, I'm good, man. I love this stuff. More people need to just not have the stigma of this crap.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I'll probably follow up with you sometime down the road here. And again, look forward to seeing, like I said, the success you guys have at Wyoming.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, Sonny. Appreciate it.